I can ask anybody in the back row if they would to go ahead and maybe close that door so that we can go ahead and get things started. I just wanted, and so I was asked on the first slide here, someone asked me where this location is and what this, where we're at, and this is a kind of a signature slide that I use, and if you've been to other presentations that I put on throughout the country, you'll notice this is a slide that I use. This is, I'm from Chicago, and I don't know, is anybody else here from Chicago? All right, we got some good representation here. So, that's my hometown. This here is a kind of a real famous icon in the city of Chicago. It's called Buckingham Fountain. It's right off of Lakeshore, or right off of Lake Michigan, on Lakeshore Drive, an area where a lot of people in the city congregate for not only sightseeing and touring, but really a lot of festivals, Grant Park, Millennium Park area. So if you ever have an opportunity to come to Chicago, I don't care what time of season it is, it's one city that there is constantly activities that really kind of will offer to all. And I don't work for the city of Chicago. I'm not here to present them or promote them either. But again, great place to visit. I really would encourage you sometime if you get the opportunity there. My name is Al Moretti. I am with a medical equipment consultancy firm, asset management firm called Renovo Solutions. We work with healthcare clients throughout the country, working with them as they develop service and maintenance strategies and reviews of how their medical equipments within their organizations are either being serviced today or how they look to them to be serviced in the future. So we bring education like this out to the community because we think it's very important that even if we're not doing, and this is not a sales pitch to do business, but we think it's important to get information out and to provide, again, knowledge back, because we too look for that knowledge back from yourselves when we meet and talk with you at conferences and just as networking as we do. So really, again, it's our pleasure to be here to put this on to you for today. And again, we'll announce our panelists here shortly, but I want to kind of set the tone a little bit. We've entitled this, Biomed to HTM Service Professional, Are You Prepared for the Leap? What does that mean? We have, clearly we're already seeing the role of the traditional biomedical technician engineer evolving. We've seen the involvement. Now we're seeing an involvement that's going to really take on some greater aspects than what we've even experienced before. So that is the nature of today, and I kind of want to set a tone a little bit of where we are and where we're going.
A medical dream comes true under the drive of industrialist Henry Kaiser, who holds the plans of the ultra-modern hospital designed by Dr. Sidney Garfield, director of the Kaiser Foundation. From the admissions office on, everything is streamlined and expedited. The patient's record reaches the doctor before he does.
That was the early EMR.
This is the last word in a combination X-ray machine and fluoroscope imported from Holland at a cost of $25,000. Every portion of the body through 180 degrees can be photographed. In the operating room, the first light of its kind is installed. No portion of an operation is ever in shadow, nor is the expectant father forgotten. Here he can get the news officially and suffer under the most comfortable circumstances possible. And for mother, well, she has only to call for her baby, and baby comes sliding through a wall in a drawer-like bassinet for a little visit with the new mother. In this $2 million institution, doors are opened by remote control, and on the single floor, patients are easily moved from place to place. Dream grounds for a dream hospital. The answer to a doctor's prayer.
As you can see, kind of, obviously, many of us in this room may have, been in a facility like that sometime earlier in our career. I'm not sure all of us, but, and anybody here from Kaiser? Because I think that this may have been a Kaiser hospital at one time back in that day. But I think what it kind of says is where has medical equipment services, where have hospitals kind of started, and where are they moving to the future? And we're going to see here in the next clip, once we get it up, that I think really kind of speaks a little more to, and we'll see where you're at today. And why don't we go ahead to that when we get that clip there ready to go. So why do I show these two clips? And I think what's really important about it is, kind of really sets the tone of, where have we been, where are we moving to? As you saw in the first clip, I said that was the original EMR. How many folks in this room remember addressographs or that type of plate stamper? I call that their first EMR. You saw the same way, talking about getting those doctor's orders in the hand before the patient got there, to them. I think that's really interesting. And you look at all of the other pieces of that, talking about getting lighting in surgery. I mean, the fluoroscope machine for $25,000. I mean, you can't even buy, the image intensifier for the fluoroscope today, probably for under $25,000 brand new. So, it really shows a lot of the advancements that, when we talk about from the 1950s, 1960s up to current day. This second clip that I used is really, I think, kind of really talks about, when we talk about today and we're looking at the future, smartphone technology is now becoming more integrated and is integrated into how even physicians are seeing real-time information either coming from medical equipment in the sense of physiological monitoring, readings. We see radiologists now, they're going to be able to read remotely by tablets or phones that will come out with that type of clarity. That's where you're moving, and many in this room are already experiencing that. And so when we talk about how was equipment serviced back in 1950, 1960, was it cutting edge at the time? And there's no question, it was the cutting edge technology at the time, and the type of service and skills that our folks in the field had at that time and needed to have were the top. And now, as we move here, we see new areas we need to reach to. And clearly today we see this transformation of our profession as they look to, as you're working in your hospitals, how do you as a clinical engineering or biomedical individual or team, how are you going to be geared to move towards providing those services? But more importantly, you as an individual from a career perspective, how are you going to get yourself in the position to develop yourself from not just being the biomedical technician working in maybe some of the ancillary areas or in areas that have been more traditional, but into advanced imaging, advanced surgery, IT, and all of that will follow behind and forward. So, I put up here some things we already know are going to happen, and I'm going to say in 2020, which I think really ties to this too, is that there are changes we already see that are in place. We see changes going forward here. We know already medical equipment technology continues to evolve. It's an IT platform. I think, how many folks in this room here today may have their clinical engineering department reporting up to an IT department head? And so we have a few. That is the trend. We see hospitals throughout the country as a consulting firm moving their clinical engineering departments from what traditionally were a facilities reporting structure. How many folks report up through facilities? Absolutely. That was the traditional move. It's going up through IT. Well, why is that? Well, every medical device today hangs on a network. It's an IT device. IT individuals are becoming biomed technicians. Biomed technicians are needing to become IT individuals. There's a great transformation going on there. How are you answering to that piece, and how do you see it for yourselves? We also know the U.S. Department of Labor forecasts that there's going to be a 20 to 30% increase in demand in the biomedical engineering field. What that means is we have a population today, as we see here in the next bullet, the average biomedical professional today is 55 years old. If you look at the spectrum, we have a highest percentage of our people are in that 50 to 65 year range, where 55 becoming the median. We have another lesser percentage that is from the 30 to the 50 range. And then when you look at 30 years old and below to 18, we have low single-digit employees today in the biomedical field. Now that's been a traditional challenge. Why is that? Most people who come in our field traditionally have either come in, if it's biomedical, if it's clinical engineering, if it's working for ISOs, they've come in through this field many times through a secondary job change. They've come in, maybe they were in another industry, a different field, it changed. They got themselves, because of changes in that field, to be re-educated, retooled, and so they moved into our field here. What we're seeing now is that with this gap, and it's a significant gap, the demand for staff to meet what we saw there in the second slide, the 2020 slide, we don't have the workforce out there, and we don't see the skill set within the workforce that's adapting towards that. We see many that are being very forward thinking, and we've seen a lot of early adopters, but what we still see a gap is a significant amount of people from that 30 to 55-year gap, or old gap, were preparing themselves for the next moves as well. Now, the effects of, as I said, the Affordable Care Act, 2016 is when the ACA really starts to, all of the areas kick in. What does that mean? I'll give you some examples. You know, today, if you were to have or had a hip replacement, let's say that the traditional charge could be $25,000 for the hip replacement, your hospital stay, you know, that was billed, the hospital would bill against that. You know, what we see is going to happen is the scorecard system comes into play on hospitals and health providers. And the scorecard system is based on many things. It's going to be based on acuity, it's going to be based on patient readmissions, it's going to be based on patient satisfaction. It's going to be all these factors now that come into really a credit score rating for that hospital. So now when they go to have that $25,000 bill that they're assessing for that procedure, depending on what their rating is, their reimbursement could be maybe $19,000 now, or maximum, or $18,000. So now hospitals have, and this is where all this preparation, as you've seen, is they know that they are going to get, a couple of things are going to happen. Yes, there's going to be more billable charges than ever before, but even the billable charges are going to have less of a reimbursement than they historically would reach. And so what does that reverberate down to? If you have less dollars coming in, you have to then look at, just like your own home, how do you minimize, how do you balance your expenses? Adding to that piece as well, you have to also maximize that you can push patients through without any interruption. So now we have some really true balance going on there as well. So as we speak through today, we're going to talk about, with our panelists and those in the audience, kind of how they've encountered that. And so as we go to, I want to go ahead and introduce our panel, and I'm going to ask each of them, as I kind of introduce them, to just kind of give a little bit of background about themselves and a little bit of their, you know, where they've started their career and where they are at today. So our first panelist is Adam Mazur. Adam, if you want to maybe give us a little bit on yourself.
Of course. Hello there, guys. How are you guys doing today? Just to let you know, the mic is okay. I really sound like that. English is my second language. So I've been in the field for 10 years. Currently, I'm with a company called Advocate Healthcare out of Chicago, Illinois. We're a 11-hospital system with an in-house biomed program. I started my career in working for OEM dialysis company. Did that for 2 years, then moved on with Advocate. And I also did Biomed in the beginning, 4 years, and then moved on working on all the biomedical equipment like patient monitoring and everything. Pretty much I've touched everything that there is in a hospital. And then an opportunity came out for me to move on to imaging, and I took that shot. And currently I primarily work on ultrasound, like a specialist for ultrasound in our system. So whenever anybody needs help with an ultrasound machine, they just give me a call and I do whatever needs to be done to get it all fixed.
Excellent, excellent. Our next panelist is Enes Askar. Enes?
Good morning, everybody. Everyone can hear me fine? Check 1, 2. I'll try not to sound like the guy from Price is Right. So, come on down, come on, get a new car. No, I'm just kidding. Not today. So my name is Enes Askar. I had started my career in first marketing to where I was just like the tech guy. I was the guy setting up projectors like these, setting up stages and whatnot. And I've always wanted to get into the medical field, and I've always wanted to either become a doctor or a nurse, and I had to find something to find that median, and I found the perfect thing. It was biomedical engineering. So instead of me being a doctor or being a nurse, I did the next best thing. I'm there to help out the doctors perform out their daily duties throughout their day, making sure that all their equipment is set to go. So I'm currently with Aramark Healthcare Technologies over in Chicago, and one of my specialties is patient monitoring, and I'm slowly moving into the imaging field as we speak. So we also do, I also work with IT heavily due to their clinical workstations. So the computers that the nurses end up moving from room to room to scan the patient's bracelets, I typically take care of those, and I have to correlate my work with them to make sure all the assets are right for each department and make sure everything's working on throughout that hospital system. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent.
Back to you, Alan.
Neil Hirarto.
Hey, good morning, everyone. How you guys doing? You guys awake this morning? How was your night out? Everyone go party? Or was it a quiet night? So unlike these guys, my career actually started on the caretaker side. I started my career about 17 years old, joined the military and Navy. I was first a submarines. I started driving submarines, didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do, or anything. I was a kid, I was kind of lost. So I got into the military. They put me in the electronics field, and I was doing everything from fixing components on a submarine to driving it to working in the kitchen. And then one day the corpsman on board, which is like the ship doctor, he came to me. He said, you know, you want something challenging? And I started my career there. And I started training to be a medical physician on submarines, went into the hospitals, and I loved it. I saw that you know, there were a few other things like that. I got a little burnt out working with the Marines, working with the Navy guys on a regular basis. Then I got pulled into the biomed field, and that was where all of this started. I ended up taking assignments everywhere I could and picking up as far as my mentors go, left and right. You know, I had one that basically told me, hey, first thing you need to do, talk to the people who know what they're doing. Carry their tool bag and learn what they need to learn what they know. So going from there, I got onto taking deployments into third world countries, humanitarian ships. My last station was on the USS Mercy, and I was working out of Indonesia, Australia, Singapore, West Indies, and took me into everything from the third world country, the beginning of the medical equipment, to the state-of-the-art stuff that you saw through Singapore, through some of the other hospitals.
Excellent. And Jamie Silva.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie, and I started in the recruiting. I'm a recruiter, and I recruit all over the U.S., literally from California to New York to Maine, everywhere. And I began my career in December of 1997, and I began working with a recruiter who was already in this industry, and I really had no knowledge at all of any of this. So it was a huge learning curve. I started in medical imaging field service, and my job eventually just evolved into biomed, PACS, IT healthcare. It just all kind of fell together. So now really I'm a combination of a medical imaging, biomed, PACS IT recruiter, even expanding now a little bit into radiation oncology. So I recruit for major hospitals across the country, ISOs, vendors, all of the above.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've assembled a panel that we believe was going to bring, again, a lot of different views and contrasts. We're going to have I've got some predetermined questions, but we're also going to bring some questions from the audience. We're going to have some interaction as we go through the next 35 or 40 minutes of our presentation. And to drive out of here, as we're talking about careers and advancing careers, the panel is going to be challenged with some questions that I'll have here that I'm going to ask them of what they see or how they've prepared or what has driven them to take their biomedical careers and advance them to either to areas that are advanced or other or higher levels, but also too, we'll ask them is what they see from a visionary perspective is they're encountering either from, and Jamie shared on it, from the recruitment side, as well as we see from our panelists, is in their healthcare organizations, what kind of downward pressures that they're feeling from either the C-suite, from supply chain, or others as to their abilities to provide even new resources in reducing costs within the organization. So first question I'm going to put out here is, I'm going to ask the panelists, as they look, what are some of the gaps that you see in medical equipment service, as you encounter them yourself in your organizations, but even at that, as you've looked at where your career was when you first came in it, and you're looking now that you have another, and these folks are all younger than me, So, they've got at least another 25 or 30 years easily, I'm sure, to work. Is there, if they're thinking about this, where do they see they've got to move themselves, knowing the challenges that are going to be in front of them? So, again, the question is, what gaps do you see, and how are you, as you're visualizing these gaps and encountering these gaps, what are you doing to prepare yourself or have prepared yourself in advancing yourself? So, NS, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
So, the way I see it, I look more into my field, and where I see where the most gap is within training. Though we have many different types of equipment throughout the hospital, and we're not specifically trained on that piece of equipment, because if you work on a GE product, GE won't give you that OEM training that you'll get from a third party. So one of the things that I've done, I had just shadowed my peers and my senior techs, because they know way more than I know and possibly what could be in the book. So basically, even though they've come from another entity, whether if they come from a GE, from a Philips, from a Siemens, I'm able to learn more that way, instead of me constantly dealing with customer service over the phone, saying, "Oh, do you have an account with us?" "No, I don't." "Well, sorry, can't help you." Yeah, yeah, we need a PO. That's how it always is, and that's one of the difficulties that we've dealt with, and peers, just networking throughout the system and seeing what could work on the type of equipment that we've serviced throughout the hospital.
Great. Adam, you want to add any comments to that?
Yeah, I do agree with Anas. Yes, training is the number one concern. I mean, we have hundreds of different pieces of equipment, and I understand we won't be able to get trained on every single one of them. So we do the same. We work with our peers. We call around. We network, but also, especially in my company, the problem is with understaffing. My company's been growing radically within the last few years, and we take on more and more accounts, and we're just not able to provide the service that we wanted to, because we just don't have enough people. And that's one of the biggest concerns we're dealing with right now. I mean, there's plans to expand to hire more people, but it takes time to get positions approved. And that's pretty much
Excellent. Neil, I'm going to ask you to take this question as well, too. And Neil, because your perspective of working in the military, governmental side, and healthcare, you've also had the opportunity to work in the civilian side now as well. What gaps do you see as you look at both of those service entities?
So I've been in the field now about 17 years. I know I look extremely young. Everyone's saying 17 years, wow. But I now currently work at Marin Hospital. I work for an ISO by the name of Renovo Solutions. Love the company, great people. Love my management. So service is definitely one of the biggest things. Training is another big thing. In the military, that was the first thing you did. You looked at training as your one and only thing. But the biggest thing about it is I see that our service gaps are that most of our professionals are learn on the job, OJT training. There's no real school, there's no real career path for us to go. We all just kind of pick it up, and we like what we see, so we keep mirroring and finding mentors to go to. We keep finding different people to network with. So as one of the bigger things, we want to start looking at schools, looking at our mentors, the people who've been doing this for 25, 30, 40 years, and they're getting ready to get out. We want to get them involved in getting training back in place, getting schools, getting them to help us with teaching. People who've kind of come up in the ranks, starting some kind of education programs and putting those in place for the younger generation, the people who are coming out of college. On my flight out here, I was sitting next to a 12-year-old, and I have teenagers myself, and I ask them all the time, what do you want to do with your life? And the first thing they say is, I don't know, Dad. Same with the 12-year-old that I was sitting next to the plane. What do you want to do? So we need to get into the schools, get into the beginning of where everything is starting at and start putting training in right there. Start promoting from the schools up. Just because our field starts right there. It starts in that education. You've got, ITs that are promoting, DeVry, ITT Tech, get into technology. But where are we? We're just starting to, come from those fields into our field where it's just simply learn as you go, pick it up as you go.
Excellent. And Jamie, I'm going to ask you to kind of take this question from the recruitment perspective. You're working with employers or individuals that are coming to you looking for employment opportunities. What are the gaps that you see?
The gaps that I have right now currently that I see with a lot of my clients is a lot of hospital systems that I've been working with. And I'm not even going to say ISOs because, but the hospital systems are looking for specialties, such as, for example, I need a sterilizer specialist in Sacramento.
Do we have one in the room? Okay, I'm just sorry.
I want to talk to you after class. Okay, so and they need to but they want them to specialize in is it Gettinger? Did I say that right? Gettinga. Okay. Primus and Steris, and I'm going to tell you, I'm combing LinkedIn like there's no tomorrow. I'm talking to people. But a lot of people are either comfortable or, there's one reason or another why they can't move. But that's one position. I also needed an OR specialist. So, and then in another hospital, I need an anesthesia specialist. So I am really seeing a pop-up of a lot of specialty areas right now. And the nice thing about these, though, is my clients are willing to pay more for that specialty person. So if I were you guys, if you're working for a hospital or even an ISO, sit down with your manager and talk about where can I specialize? Because I think that you will gain a lot in the future if you own, like, I am going to be the sterilizer king of this hospital. Whenever there's a sterilizer issue, I want them to come to me. Own it. Or a lot of my clients are also starting to ask me for biomeds who have entry-level x-ray experience because there's a shortage of imaging and cath lab engineers as well. So if you can get some of that kind of training, do it. I would highly, highly recommend you do it because, of course, we all know they get paid a little bit more, but it's a good career path for you, too, if you want to get into the imaging side. If you don't want to get into the imaging side, specialize in OR or anesthesia or sterilizers.
Thank you, absolutely. Oh, go ahead, please. Did you have another ad?
I totally agree with your perspective on specialization, but with my field, I've kind of seen, people that kind of specialize here, specialize there, like that. But I'm going to have to say from hybrid, I've specialized in a lot of things because I realized that flexibility within this entire field is probably one of the biggest things that keeps you going, keeps you able to move from point to point. Because of that, because of this, everyone wanting this specialty, they want the specialty because they want that personalized service. They want someone who knows exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it, especially as it changes faster and faster. Someone who works on a piece of equipment every single day, day in and day out, yes, they're going to know that piece of equipment. But then when that piece of equipment changes in 5-10 years, they're obsolete. So I'm going to say if you specialize in a lot of stuff.
Excellent,
Can I
excellent.
add something to that?
Please, go ahead, please.
One more thing, too. When you have your yearly or semi-annual reviews or whatever, ask what training classes are coming up and keep current on your training of general biomed or whatever it is, because I also have some great candidates that I know are very good biomed techs, but they're working on old stuff at their hospital, so they're looking for a change. But my managers are like, well, gosh, the stuff he works on is like 10 years old. We want 7 years plus. So try to always keep current on what you're. I know it's hard, and I know it can't always happen, but try to stay current on the newer stuff. Even if you have to shadow somebody, it will definitely benefit you in the long run.
Excellent. And I think what speaks to that there, and I can tell you from our experiences from a consultancy perspective, as we see hospitals throughout the country, they are looking at advanced type of opportunities, surgical integration, looking into the higher ends of imaging is even more than just a first pass. They're looking to get into situations where they have people who can actually provide 75, 80% of the services there. The specialization around OR and imaging, I think, have always been kind of talked about and dabbled around within hospitals in a more unrealistic manner than a realistic manner. The realistic manner now is really what's being pushed down to. As organizations are looking to reduce cost, and they have a team there of professionals, can they or could they be that answer to them? And I think you as an individual see that, seek that out, and increase it. I think what's interesting is Jamie kind of spoke to, she speaks with clients in the country that are looking for staff. That's I can't, there is not the demand for that is so great to the supply. And why is that? Why is that? Again, we have a great number of folks in our industry today that have, if they've not advanced themselves or have taken that advancement opportunity, they're not filling that gap. One of the things we do see, though, is we see newer people coming into the field, and I'm going to kind of lean back to the youth coming in, and I know many people are going to say, well, they're young, they don't know what they're doing, but I have to say we were all young at one time, too. We were that group. But, we see a very educated and IT-driven group of people now coming in. And that tells you already because why? Because they are versed in it through the way they were grown up and the way they were raised with games and other type of apparatus. Same thing for the biomedical technician of today. You have got to lay out that roadmap for yourself there as well. I'm going to throw out another question here, and I'm going to go right into it because I think this is I love this one. This is one that nobody ever wants to talk about, right? Compensation, what you get paid, right? How many times have you been in a meeting? Is that if you're in a department meeting, is that ever, nobody wants to talk, they'll never talk about salary, right? I mean, of course, and of course, nobody's ever hired for salary, right? Right? Is that right? Is that true? I've heard that one before. I think we got to be realistic too. If you're developing yourself from a biomed to a hybrid or a specialist, is the compensation factor going to increase your marketability? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. I think, if you were to talk with your colleagues in the room or even outside the room, the gap and the delta for individuals that are skilled and successful in advanced and specialized areas is by tens of thousands of dollars, not by thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. That is only going to increase because of the necessity of organizations now understanding that if they want to get to this new type of pathway, to bring in that talent level, if they're bringing somebody in that they want to be their CT engineer on site now, they're going to have to pay that person base salaries, depending on where they are in the country, of $75,000, $85,000, $95,000 base salaries. They're going to have to pay in areas where it was before, areas that they never even consider. A hospital would never pay a house employee, and maybe if I'm wrong, please raise your hand. That was not the norm, right? It'd be in the lower levels. But so as you look at this and we talk more about this, I'm going to bring out the compensation piece. And so I'm going to ask I'm going to pose it to the panelists to kind of, in their view and their vision, as they've kind of developed themselves from a special perspective, do they see compensation as becoming more within their reach now on higher levels? So, Adam, I'm going to let you lead off on that one because you're making the most on the panel, I know.
That's right, yeah. Well, talk about compensation is a double-edged sword because it's okay, but it can always be better. But as you said, when we evolve, when we learn more equipment, we become more valuable for the company. About a year ago, I actually I interviewed with a different company, with an OEM, and I got offered a job. It was a good job, better paid by what I was making at the time, and I went back, talked to my director, my manager, and they didn't want to let me go. They came back with a better offer, and I stayed with the company. But still, I was really ready to quit because of several different reasons. But yeah, because developed myself, I evolved. Because of the knowledge I possessed, they found that it was a better option for a company to keep me, and that's what happened.
Great. NS, you want to talk about compensation?
Yeah. Well, me coming in as an entry-level biomedical engineer, I came in thinking, I want to learn, a little bit of everything. I want to see, what all the other types of equipment throughout the hospital. I want to be able to help everybody, right? But of course, you'll be great at the, what's the saying? It's the, you could be great at many talents, but a master of none. You guys get what I'm saying? No, I'm gonna guess not. Jack of all trades, thank you. Thank you. There we go. And as I'm slowly moving into the imaging field, I see that the more higher end equipment that you're dealing with, the more you should get compensated. I think it's also a motivator. Just because if you're working on an ultrasound machine and that being down for that hour, that's money that the hospital is losing, and of course you're being compensated that salary to make sure that they're up and running. So me moving into the field and trying to see which modality I wanted to get into, whether it was lab, going into the sterilizers or imaging. I seen that from the outward perspective, that should be one of the keys, just specializing in one, and imaging was one for me. So.
I'm not going to skip over Neil, but I'm going to have the microphone go to Jamie and have her talk a little bit on compensation.
Compensations for biomed technicians are going up. Specialty positions like the anesthesia and the sterilizer positions you will make probably anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 easy over a general biomed job. Imaging positions are skyrocketing, as we know. I mean, and really, it used to be just in California, but even in Chicago, in Pennsylvania, even in lower cost of living areas, the imaging positions are going up dramatically because it's competition. If a hospital gets a good imaging engineer, they want to pay him real well because they don't want to lose him. They want him there for a long time. So compensations are definitely going up, and even for biomeds. And the hospitals are going back getting permissions to raise the salaries because they don't want to lose you guys once they get you if you're good. So they're really trying to work on those. Exactly. And I'm a recruiter, and when I place people with my clients, one of the things I ask candidates is, are you looking for a long-term opportunity? Because some people say, well, I can stay here a couple years, but then I might have to move because my wife, or, they have reasons. And I'm like, well, listen, I'm looking for long-term because exactly why the hospitals are going to spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on you, getting you trained up the way they want you, and they don't want to lose you. Well, yeah, and I'm being low. I am totally being low because I know some of my clients will spend $1 million a year getting their people trained up to how they want them to be. It's worth it to them if you're going to stay long term. But yeah, that's what, if they provide you that training, they don't want you walking out the door in 6 months. No way. I mean, that's a lot of money. So they're willing to invest in you if they know you're going to invest in them and stay there and be a long-term employee. Can I add something to that, Neil? It's not even the managers. The managers would pay you what you're asking because they understand. It's their managers. They have to go to their managers to get that approved. They can't just say, okay, yeah, we'll pay you this much. So that's the fight. That's the struggle right now with a lot of hospital systems, is the upper management.
Also, I think if you look at long term, it's a bigger profit for a hospital to just get an engineer trained. If you want to look long term, than call a company in, Philips, or the amount of money that they charge for services is astronomical too.
Well, I'll tell you what. This is my. I would say I'm a little over 3 years into biomedical engineering, and I'm slowly getting into it. It's tough, depending on who you shadow. Like for me, for example, I'm shadowing other imaging techs, so I can slowly get into the field. So I'm more comfortable with the equipment. So a couple of years, I would say, to get your feet wet. It's possible, but I would say it'd be difficult to get into the imaging.
Neil, get the microphone to Neil.
Okay. So what I would recommend then is I'd recommend seeing about getting intern programs and getting your feet wet those ways. Intern programs. There's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of companies that are willing to, imaging specialists as well too. And there's a lot of techs that are out there that never even did biomed. They went directly into the imaging side. They saw what they were looking for, and they went for it.
For what? You're 68 and you just started. like he said, try to get an internship or look for, when you're looking on, like I would recommend going to Indeed.com, look for BMET 1. Indeed.com. It's what it is. It's a catch-all for jobs across the country. So like you go to Indeed and you type in biomed service debt. What do biomed service or biomed Dallas? Everybody who's it go to different 10, 20 different websites and pull the position that you're looking for in Dallas. And if I were you, I would go to the BMET 1 positions. That's where you're probably going to have to start off, if not an internship. Definitely, yeah. I don't know. Is there?
I'll speak to that. Yes, there is actually. And so DeVry University, which has a national presence, they offer a 4-year biomedical bachelor degree program that is geared towards the servicing side of biomedical engineering. Because as we know, many of us in this room, biomedical engineering, there's two pathways. There's research and development, and then there's the servicing and engineering side. So yes, to answer your question, there is a BS bachelor's program available through DeVry, and there's also some other colleges as well too. Vincennes University near Indianapolis, Indiana, is one that I know of as well too that has a bachelor's program in biomedical engineering technology. So there's a lot of ways to step into it, and as you can hear, and I want to segue us because we're kind of getting down to I got the 2-minute warning. So I want to kind of just bring us towards a little bit of the closure, but I would encourage, let's continue the dialogue outside the room here, because this is really great interaction between all the parties. We've got great resources here that can even speak to anyone in the room on the questions and topics. I want to kind of just bring us back to just into a close, this, as we talked about, are you prepared to make the leap? As we say here, I hope we'll say here. Well, the last slide isn't coming up, but you'll see in the last slide, as you'll see in your handout, are you prepared to make the leap? And what I want to kind of leave you with here a little bit is, take a look at not only your own careers, whatever aspect you are in, if it's in biomedical engineering, if you're doing imaging, if you're looking to get into the field, if you're in ISO, you're a supplier, the changes that are going on in healthcare today are going to affect are already affecting every person who is in this profession, no matter what your capacity is. Your abilities to excel yourself in a career and advance yourself in a career is going to be relying, clearly as it always has been, on yourself and your ability to see the changes, create a vision. One of the things I will also leave here as well too, as we always clearly see, understanding how hospitals and how they operate and your impact into the hospital is key as you look at your career. Once you understand how their operations work, it will also help you to understand how you have to recraft your skills or acquire new skills or also advance yourself within the areas of medical equipment servicing, again, to move your career forward as well. So I want to thank our panel here, if we can give them a round of applause for today. I want to thank the audience. We've had, we could have pushed this on for another hour because this is a topic that can move itself through. So again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the expo, and be safe wherever you travel back to after today.